On the first day of school, I enter my classroom and I'm so excited to see all of the new faces. I scan the 34 or so new AP chemistry students that sit in front of me, and I see two black faces. Two. In their faces, I see me. In 1998, I was a student at PS 30 in the south side of Jamaica, Queens. I grew up in Rochdale Village. And if you've ever flown out of JFK, you have definitely seen it. It's the 20 or so brick buildings that sort of shoot out into the skyline. I attended PS 30 from the time I was in pre-K, and it was a very close-knit community. I knew everyone I went to school with, even the teachers. They lived in our community. So it wasn't a rare sight to see teachers shopping at Key Food or even doing laundry in the basement of our building. Entering the fourth grade changed the trajectory of my entire life. Up until this point, I had only been taught by teachers who look like me. And I mean that in every sense. From pre-K until third grade, I had only been taught by black women. So it makes sense that when Miss Rahman entered our school in the fourth grade, we were all fascinated. Everything she did and said amazed us. I mean, her clothes, matching pantsuits, and her handwriting, perfect cursive, everything she did just fascinated us. We were astounded. So even though we all hit her with the face when she announced we would be participating in a science fair, we all obliged. I go home and I tell my grandmother that I need to do a science fair project, to which she says, "What's that?" And I say, "Like a volcano." To which she replies, "You ain't making no volcano in my house." So I set out to find a different project, and I honestly don't know how I landed on salt crystals. I keep thinking, what did we do before Google? And I'm still drawing a blank. My grandmother gives me $10 to go get materials, and then I discovered that most of the stuff that I needed, we already had in the house. So salt crystals it was. That was my science fair project. And I know you guys are wondering, what did I do with that $10? I spent it on candy, okay? Sorry, Grandma. She still doesn't know. Okay. So we had a few weeks to do our experiments and put together our boards. Then one day we had an all-morning fair. The teachers and school staff came around and asked us questions about our experiments. And then later that day they announced the winners. So I know you guys are wondering, on the edge of your seats, you're thinking I won first place. I didn't. I won second place. And I cried. I mean, I boo-hoo cried. I Kim Kardashian ugly cried. I mean, I was just so happy. I'm thinking now, I thought my project was so simple. It was just salt and water, It was cheap. It wasn't complicated. I really didn't think that what I did was science, right? 10 years old, I don't think that scientists look like me. Right? They don't come from the south side of Jamaica, Queens. So fast forward to 2007, I just transferred from Northeastern University to SUNY Albany, and I enrolled in a P-Chem course, or physical chemistry, and the chair of the department was actually our lab teacher. Oh, it was our lab professor. I know they don't like using that, teacher word. And we spent our first lab session going over expectations. We made our lab groups. And then most of us were coming to grips with the fact that no matter what we did for our first paper, it would be underwhelming to him. In his own words, no one gets an A the first time around. So 2 weeks later, he's handing back our papers and he's calling us in one by one into the back office to go over what needs to be improved for our next paper. My last name is M, so of course I wasn't first. But name after name is called before me, and so my heart's pounding. It's pounding so, hard I can hear it drumming in my ears. And then I start thinking, maybe he forgot me. That's the first thing. And then after more time goes on, I'm thinking like, shit, my paper's really that bad. So finally he calls me into the office, and I sit down across from him, and he hands me my paper. And there is an A- circled in red on top. Thank you. So of course I'm feeling like, yeah, all right, okay. So he starts talking to me, and he starts asking me questions. He wants to know a little bit more about me. He starts commenting on how well written my paper was, how shocked he is about how well written my paper was. Then he starts asking more questions. So the first question he asks is, where did you go to school? And I say, well, I went to school in New York City. And then he says, private school? And I say, no, I went to public school, Manhattan Center, Big Odds, whoop, whoop. I just did that because you're sitting there. No, I went to public school. I didn't go to private school. Well, you just write so well. I am so impressed. I'm just shocked. Okay. Do you have a tutor? No. Well, you write so well. Okay. You wouldn't happen to be Haitian, would you? No, I'm not Haitian. Well, the reason why I ask is because my son is doing charity work down with the Haitians, and it would be really nice if I could tell him I met one here. Okay. And that was it. That was our conversation. I got up and I left. I go back to my dorm room, and I remember talking to my mom. I just transferred schools. I went from Northeastern to SUNY Albany, so it was a really big deal. This was my first big paper. And I was excited. A-. Like, I was very happy. I was very proud of what I did. My mom, however, was not as proud. She was not as happy. So I tell her the whole exchange, and she says immediately, what did he say to you? And then I tell her, I'm like, he complimented how well I wrote. He thought I went to private school. He thought I had a tutor. And she said, he said this to your face. Are you serious? And I'm like, oh my God, okay, let's not do this, Mom. You just don't get it. You don't understand, right? It's the chair of the department. He gave me an A-. He thinks my writing is good. Like, you just don't understand. And I'll never forget that she said to me, no, you don't understand. And that was one of the most difficult conversations that my mother and I ever had. I really didn't get it. How could a compliment be an insult? I mean, he'd given me an A, right? I should be proud. I should be happy. Wouldn't it have made more sense if he failed me, right? It wasn't until much later that I was confronted with some of the soft bigotry from my own colleagues, that I look back on this exchange and I see it for exactly what it was. His surprise, right, was rooted in this idea that someone who looks like me shouldn't write like this. That if I were able to perform to a certain caliber, right, there had to be a reason why, right? Like, what help did I have to get here? I think about this exchange when I look out on my classroom and I see 2 Black students sitting in front of me in my AP Chem class. Because that kind of thinking, magnified, right, sets the stage for there to be 2 Black students sitting in my AP Chem classroom. Okay, I said I wasn't gonna get emotional. Okay. These 2 stories from my life, almost a decade apart, are not unique, okay? People who look like me have and continue to break down barriers, right? And challenge assumptions about what a scientist, what a chemist looks like. And every single year, day after day, I stand in front of my students, and I hope that when I look at my Black students, when they see me, they see themselves. Thank you.